Welcome to Fabulous Nuts ASMR. We are finishing the story of Flower Fairies. It was written by Clara Judson in the early 1900s. I can't remember the exact date, so I don't want to say. However, I know it's in the public domain, and I know it's right there in the description. So we have all of our bases covered. Please be sure you have your snuggle of the night and your drink beside you. Mine's across the room. Let me go get it, and then we'll get started. Go sit in your seat. All right. There we go. Drink, check. Blankie, check. We are ready to read. And I can see the chat. So here we go. Flower Fairies by Clara Judson, Part 2. One morning in the early summer, a messenger from a nearby forest appeared before the Queen Fairy and delivered a message carefully wrapped in a silken cocoon. The Queen was greatly pleased to receive a really, truly letter, for fairies seldom get letters. So she called all the fairies playing nearby and asked them to help her read it. They immediately stopped their games and gathered around the Queen. She unwrapped and unwrapped until the folds of shimmering webs were spread out before her, and she could plainly read the letters painted on the silk. The note said, "Dear Flower Queen, I have many times heard from the birds and the bees tales of your beautiful house. Until I am very until I'm very anxious to see your forest for myself. If it is convenient for you to be at home, I will come and make you a call. Tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock, please give my messenger your answer. Your friend, the Crystal Queen." A great clapping of hands greeted the reading of the message, and the Queen exclaimed, "Of course I'll be home." But she must write the answer, so she called 3 fat, sheepy-looking silkworms to her, and very soon they had woven a silky roll on which the Queen printed a note telling the Crystal Queen that she would be home and that the Crystal Queen would be most welcome. The messenger took the roll of silk, carefully wrapped it in a brown covering, and departed. When he was out of sight, all the fairies heaved a big sigh and looked at each other. A queen from another forest to visit them? Who had ever heard of such a wonderful thing happening? What could they do to make her visit pleasant and happy? Everybody was still thinking and thinking. "I have an idea," cried the Queen, clapping her hands. "Let's have a pageant for her." "A pageant!" exclaimed the white violet. "What is a pageant?" "A pageant," replied the Queen, "is a parade that tells a story, and it must all be very, very beautiful." "Well, but what story could we tell in a parade?" asked the green twig. I can't think of anything that would do." "Well," said the Queen, who had been thinking hard, "I think we could have a pageant of a day and represent the sunrise, the noon, and the night in our parade. Would you like that? Just fine, shouted the fairies together. Only you must tell us what to do. You who are on the side, said the queen, waving her right hand, are the morning, and your costumes must show the color of the sunrise. You in front of me are noontime, and you must be the brilliant gold and white of the sun at noon. You over there, wave your left hand. You are the sunset, and you must show how the sun glows and slowly fades into night. Now, you must all get to work on your costumes at once, for there is much to do and only this day to do it. As she waved her hands for them to depart, she added, be here before 10 in the morning and bring with you a trumpet painted to match your costumes. As soon as she finished speaking, the fairies hurried off to their homes to begin work. All the afternoon, they worked on gathering silky flower petals, taking them to the spiders to be woven together and paint on them the beautiful colors of the sky. Throughout the whole forest was heard the hum of preparations. At last night came, and the tired fairies were glad to stop and rest. Everything was ready except the trumpets, and those could be fixed in the morning. So, with tired fingers but light hearts, the fairies tumbled into their flower beds for the night, and all night long they dreamed wonderful dreams of pageants. Bright and early in the morning, every fairy hopped happily down to the ground, so happy they could hardly wait until 10 o'clock. White, Violet, Sparkling Shell, and Leaf Bud had been separated from in the crowd before the queen when she planned the parade, so each was a different part of the pageant, but they agreed to bring their costumes to White Violet's home to help each other dress. Leaf Bud was in the morning section, and her dress was a rosy pink with silver lace over it, so that when she moved, it looked like the morning sunshine. On her head, she wore a crown of diamonds, which sparkled like dewdrops on the flower. Sparkling Shell represented the noon. Her dress, made of white satiny water lily her dress Her dress was made of white, satiny, water lily petals, and she wore a golden girdle and a golden band in her hair. White Violet was an evening fairy, her dress of pale violet blue, like the evening sky, had silver stars all over it, and her girdle was of rose color, like the sunset clouds. On her head she wore a tiny band of gold, to which was fastened a golden crescent. When they were all dressed, they ran to where the morning glories grew and picked their trumpets. But they had forgotten that the morning glories were all white, and the queen had said that the trumpets should match their costumes. So quickly they ran home, slipped on their aprons, and painted the morning glories gorgeous colors of rose and yellow and blue to match their dresses. By the time it was nearly 10 o'clock, and they put their paint boxes away and hurried off to the queen's palace. There they saw dozens of other fairies in beautiful costumes, all carrying happily painted morning glory trumpets. The queen had them hide behind some of the tall bushes so they wouldn't be seen until the pageant began. Promptly at 10 o'clock, a beautiful red bird flew down from the trees, and on his back rode the crystal queen. When the bird reached the ground, the queen daintily stepped down and greeted the flower queen. Flower queen took her hands together, and together they flew up into the Jack on the pulpit throne. When they were comfortably seated, Flower Queen gave a signal and the pageant began. From behind the bushes, groups of fairies dressed in the sunrise colors marched out, all playing fairy music on their morning glory trumpets. After them came the noontime fairies in white and gold and waving dazzling golden banners in the sunshine. Following them came, turning the page, the sunset fairies, the most beautiful of all, in their colors of violet, blue, and rose. The Crystal Queen was so delighted with the parade that she stood up and clapped her hands all the time it was going by. When it was over, the Flower Queen invited all the fairies into her cave palace, which was the largest of her houses, to have lunch with the two queens. The fairies were delighted with the idea, and setting their trumpets down on the mossy bank, they tromped into the cave. There they had such a jolly time eating lunch and making speeches and playing games, and they never once thought of the flower trumpets in the sun. At 2 o'clock, when they came out of the cave, rested and ready for another march, what do you suppose they found? All the dainty morning glory trumpets which they had left standing, the broad ends down in the sun, had curled up and fainted and faded until they looked dirty white pipes standing on mussed up frills. And though each fairy picked up his trumpet and blew, trying to get it back in shape again, it was too late. The trumpets were spoiled. Ever since then, the morning glories open out in the fresh morning and happy, but by noon they curl up and fade because the fairies left them too long in the hot sun, and the colors of morning glory are the colors of the sky at morning, at noon, and at sunset, just as the fairies painted them for the pageant long ago. The magic perfume. The sun began to drop in the western sky, and still the Crystal Queen lingered. Even queens find it hard to go home when they're having a fine visit. At last she jumped up and exclaimed, "Now I must go, for the night will soon be here. But first I want to give you a magic gift. I will place it in the most beautiful flower in your forest." "The most beautiful flower!" exclaimed the Flower Queen. "How can I tell which is the most beautiful flower when they're all so lovely?" "You must decide," said the Crystal Queen, "for my gift can only go to one flower only. If that is the case, replied the Flower Queen, come into my garden and we will see which is the most beautiful flower of all. Calling two or three fairies to go with them, they went into the very heart of the forest, where they found a lovely garden. In this garden was every kind of flower that grew in the forest, and it was so planned that each flower looked its very best. Can you imagine? As they entered the gate, the Crystal Queen exclaimed, I don't wonder you couldn't decide, for never even I never even imagined so many lovely fairies grew in the world. What shall we do to decide? I have a plan, said the Flower Queen, who had been gravely thinking what to do. You see, our flowers are not just pretty things to look at, but they have lives of their own. Sometimes their very beautiful flower is not all good, and sometimes one not so pretty at first sight is really lovely. Now my plan is to walk up and down through the garden and listen as the flowers talk and see which is both the prettiest and the best. What a wonderful idea, said the Crystal Queen. I never knew flowers could talk. Only a few people can understand them, Flower Queen replied. But if you will listen carefully, perhaps you can hear what they say. They walked on until they came to a big, stately sunflower. He proudly shook his leaves, lifted his head, and said, You have stopped at just the right place, for you can easily see I am the handsomest flower in the garden. So see how tall and grand I am, and how large and glorious my flowers are. And just then a voice from a hollyhock a little further on called out, Oh, Queen, if you wish to see a very best flower, look at me. I am as tall as the sunflower, but my flowers are of dainty colors, and anyone can see I am the prettiest. As As he spoke, he opened up two new blooms and proudly waved his stalks in the breeze. I don't like them very well, whispered the Crystal Queen. Let's look at some of the littler ones. Maybe they're not so vain. So they walked on until they came to some beautiful tulips. Surely these are pretty and good, said the Queen as she touched the satiny petals with her fingers. But as she spoke, the tulip said, I knew you would be coming here, for you can plainly see I am the most beautiful flower that grows. The Crystal Queen shook her head so sadly. No, she whispered, I cannot give my gift to the tulips. And so they walked through the whole garden, admiring the stately irises, the dainty daffodils, and the lovely roses. But every time they were about to decide, the flower would speak up and ask for the gift. At last they were standing quietly at the far corner of the garden, wondering what to do, when they heard a saucy little buttercup say, The Queen hasn't seen you. Why don't you ask her to take a look at you? Turning to look for the flower to whom the buttercup was speaking, they saw a dainty little violet nestled down in the green moss. What do you think, Violet? asked the queen. "Should I give you the magic gift?" "Oh, no, no," replied Violet. "There are so many flowers more beautiful than I am. You must look at them. I am only a very little flower." The queens both smiled and looked very happy, for they knew that the very last flower they had seen was the flower that was kind and modest as well as beautiful. The Crystal Queen opened a white pearl box which she had carried, and on the face of the violet emptied the powder it contained, saying, "Always and forever." Then she waved her hand over the violet. Immediately the powder melted into the heart of the flower, and the deliciously sweet perfume filled the air. "Now I must go," said the Crystal Queen, and calling her red bird, she jumped on his back. "I want you to come and see me some day," she called, and started back home. "Hasn't this been a wonderful day?" exclaimed Leafbud. "It almost seems like a dream," added Sparkling Shell. "We know it isn't a dream. A dream. The, I just want to add an aside. Because this was written so long ago, the hyphen for isn't is not together, it's separated. And so it's very weird to see it in print as is, and N apostrophe T separated. Now we add the word together. Just a little aside for my history nerds. All right. So the queen, "We know it isn't a dream, though," said the queen, "for we have the perfume of the violet all around us. And ever since then, the violet has had the sweetest perfume of all the flower fairies." Springtime! "Oh dear, I am so tired of the snow," sighed little Sparkling Shell one day when the winter was more than half over. "I wish I could think of something different to do." "Tired of the snow!" exclaimed White Violet. "I am never tired of the snow. It is so soft and clean and white. I love looking at it, playing in it. Come on, Sparkling Shell, let's go over and play with Silvermoss and Leafbud. See, they are making a castle with turrets and towers out of the snow and ice." First they patted the snow down and formed firm and hard for a good floor. Then they built the sides of tiny snowballs, rolled hard and laid together like bricks. Then they wished to make a window. They laid some twigs across the opening and then shook snow over them to hide the brown. Soon the castle was up and high enough for a roof, and Silvermoss and Leafbud scampered off for some cedar branches, while Sparkling Shell and White Violet took some pine cones and brushed the floor of the house. Turning the pages. Smooth and clean, and filled up all the chinks between the snowballs with fresh snow. And then they laid cedar boughs across the roof and threw all the snow they could up on top to hide the brown and green. "There, that's good enough," said Silvermoss. "Now I'm going to make a tower." "So am I," shouted Leafbud. "Don't anybody look." They all set to work, each hiding from the other, so his tower would be a surprise. So quietly so quietly they did work that the forest was very still, the only sounds being that of cracking of the ice and branches of trees and the soft thud of snow as it blew from the tree to the ground. "Mine's done!" shouted Leafbud. "Only you'll have to help me put it in." So they scampered over to where Leafbud was working, and there they saw a beautiful round tower with windows in all the sides and a piece of cedar stuck on top for a flagpole. They all worked hard together and dragged the tower over to the snow castle and put it up on the front corner. Then they ran back to the other towers, and in a few minutes a lovely tower stood on top of each corner. Then they ran back of each corner of the castle, and the fairies stood off to admire their work. "Well, what should we do next?" asked White Violet. "It seems to me that this is just pretty as we could possibly make it." "We ought to call the Queen and let her see our castle, and maybe she can tell us what to do next," said Sparkling Shell. "Yes, maybe she knows of something else to do," they all shouted as they skipped off to the Winter Palace to find the Queen. You should see the Winter Palace. There were no flowers for the fairies to sleep in, so in the fall there was the very first thing Jack Frost did when he came down from the North Pole was to make ice houses for them along the edge of the brook. Now the Queen's house was on a little hill overlooking the brook, so she could watch all her subjects when they were playing on the ice. The Queen was very happy to go see the castle. She thought it was surely the prettiest one she had ever seen, and she promised to ask Jack Frost to put some icicles on it so it would be even prettier in the morning. I lost my place. The Queen was very happy. Said, "Now," said Sparkling Shell, "what shall we do next, dear Queen? I am so tired of winter and ice and snow. I want the flowers to come." "Well, well," said the Queen, "I wonder what we can do about that." And she smiled with a little sparkle in her eye, as if she knew something very nice, only she wouldn't tell them quite yet. "You may each go in different directions to the forest and tell as many fairies as you can find to come to my palace when the sun is in the middle of the heaven. Then, when you are all there, I will tell you something to do." "Oh, goody!" shouted the fairies as they hurried off. "We know it's going to be something we like." And with a hop and a skip, they disappeared to do the errand. In about an hour, sorry about that, in about an hour, the fairies began coming to the palace, all eager to know what the surprise had been the Queen had in store for them. A minute later, she came out before them, and following just behind her were two of her helpers carrying mysterious brown bags stuffed full with something. Nobody had any idea what it could be. "My dear people," said the Queen, "one of our fairies told me this morning that you are all tired of winter sports and ready for flowers of spring." "Yes, indeed," cried all the fairies together. "We want the flowers to come and the birds, and we want the," turning the page, "the ice to melt so we can see the fish in the brook. We want spring." "Very well, then," replied the Queen. "You must all help me bring the spring." "But how can we help?" asked little Violet. "Jack Frost has his help, and his helpers are so much bigger and stronger than we are." "I'll tell you a secret," said the Queen. "Jack Frost and his men are very strong and powerful, but there is one thing they are really afraid of, and that is a flower. If they see a blooming flower coming up through the ground, they pack up their snow and ice and vanish to the North Pole. But how can a blooming flower come through the ice and snow? Asked Sparkling Shell. That is just what I'm going to tell you, replied the Queen. I have in these brown bags some magic seeds, and you must each have one seed. Come up now and get them, and I will tell you how to plant them. So the fairies marched past the open bags, and each fairy reached in and took one seed and held it tightly, waiting for the Queen to speak again. Now, these are magic seeds, and they must be planted differently from other seeds, or they will not grow. Each fairy must go around through the forest and do some kind or loving act that right there plant the seed. In the morning we will see what happens. The Queen nodded and smiled at them and waved her wand for them to go. The fairies went away very quietly, for they were all thinking about what the Queen had said and wondering what kind act they could find to do. I don't see what a little fairy can do in winter, said Leafbud doubtfully. I don't either, said Silvermoss, but I'm going to keep my eyes open and maybe I'll see something. And when he had walked but a little way, he noticed a squirrel trying to carry some nuts, but he was in such a hurry he kept dropping some. Here, let me help you, said Silvermoss. Thank you, said the squirrel. I'm trying to take these to a friend of mine who is hungry, and I want to get them there so quickly. I'll take part of your load, said Silvermoss. So they divided up and got to the hungry squirrel very soon. Thank you, Silvermoss, said the squirrel. That was a very kind deed. And Silvermoss went away towards home, thinking very hard. If that was a very kind deed, as the squirrel said, then I must plant the seed. So he went where he had first met the squirrel and planted the seed deep in the snow. Sparkling Bud found a poor little gray spider who had worked so hard weaving the net that her fingers were numb and cold. She took him into her snow house to let him get good and warm. He was so grateful that she told him all about the magic seed, and he said helping her plant the seed in the snow in front of her house. White Violet found a little sparrow with a hurt foot, so she went and got a cedar twig and a soft brown moss and fixed a comfortable bed for him to lie on and covered him with soft and warm so he could get nicely rested. Then, when he was all snug and warm and asleep, she remembered her seed and planted it beside him. So all through the forest, each fairy found something he or she could do, and the seeds were planted all before sundown. Bright and early the next morning, the fairies hopped up and ran to see what had happened to the seeds that night. And excuse me. And what do you suppose they saw? At every place they planted a seed was a tiny crocus flower was lifting its head from the snow. The fairies were so happy. They ran to tell the Queen, and she went all through the forest with them, hunting for the flowers and watching the dainty petals unfold. By noon, there were dozens of happy crocuses. Some were white, some pink, some lavender, standing bravely in the snow. And just had the Fairy Queen said, Jack Frost and his men saw the flower and thought spring must be coming to catch them, so they gathered up their ice and snow and hurried off to Jack Frost's kingdom in the North Pole. I love how they are weaving like truth about the flowers into the stories. Growing up in the front of my mom's house, one of the dogwood trees had yellow crocuses planted all around it, and they were the first flowers to ever come out. And I always watched for them, and then finally I realized spring was on its way. All right, and spring had come. So every year yet, when everybody is tired of winter, the crocuses come up through the snow, and Jack Frost is frightened away. Then spring comes quickly. True, 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 true. The fairy party. I wish I could give a party sometime, said Leafbud, as she and White Violet were swinging on some tall grasses over by the brook. We go to the Queen's parties all the time, and I think we ought to have one ourselves. Do you think we could really have a party and invite the Queen? Exclaimed White Violet, her eyes big and wide as she wondered at the idea. Of course we could, said Leafbud confidently. Only we'd have to work hard and have everything very nice if we intend to invite the Queen. We might ask Sparkling Shell to help us. All right, said White Violet. Let's go to her now. So down the ground they jumped and ran off to find Sparkling Shell. After a long hunt, they found her playing with her paints in a cave by the pool. And when they found her, they w- and when they told After a long hunt, they found her playing with her paints down by the pool. But when she found there was going to be a party, she happily stopped and promised to help. Where in the world shall we have it? Asked White Violet, puckering the front of her forehead while the others looked straight ahead and thought very hard. Oh, I know, shouted Sparkling Shell, dancing up and down until the shell on her brow sparkled like a diamond. Let's have it at the three big water lily leaves out on the pond. The others looked where she pointed, and sure enough, there were three beautiful green water lily leaves, plenty big enough for a party, and just beside them were two lovely big lilies, white with golden centers, and beyond were several different kinds of white lilies standing straight and tall above the water. Just the very place, they all shouted, for we can play on two of the leaves and have our good things to eat on another. Now let's plan what to do. So they sat down on the bank and got their heads very close together and whispered their plans for the party. Green, green, sorry, Green Twig and Silvermoss saw them together and suspected they were planning some fun and said, Come on, girls, come and play with us for a while. Not today, said Sparkling Shell proudly. We are too busy planning a zissa. Hooray, hello, shouted Leafbud as she jumped up and put her hand over Sparkling Shell's mouth just in time to keep the word party from coming out. You must be careful not to tell, she whispered, and call to the boys in their most grown-up manner. We're entirely too busy to play today. You will have to excuse us. All right, said the boys. We don't care so much. And they started off by themselves. But they had gone only a little way when Silver Moss said, Let's sit down here and watch what they're doing and see if it's really so much fun. So they sat down on some nice soft moss and watched very carefully. Pretty soon they saw Leafbud go away, and she hunted up the sleepy old king of the spiders and had a long talk with him. White Violet went to the palace of the king of the lightning bugs and had a long conference with him, and Sparkling Shell went to the daisy field and picked a great armful of daisies and brought them back by the pond. Now, can you make anything of that? Asked Green Twig disgustedly as he saw White Violet and Leafbud return to the bank of the brook. No, I can't, replied Silver Moss, and they watched carefully a little longer, but the three fairies were only painting daisies, so they gave up trying to find out the secret and started to play other games. About noon, every fairy in the forest was surprised to find at his home a daisy delivered there by a fairy messenger. On every one of the white daisy petals was a word, and on e- and on every one of the white daisy petals was a word. And if they began at the right place and read straight around, they found the message, "Come to a party on the pond at sundown." Well, you may be sure that there was much clapping of hands and dancing for joy all through the forest as the messages were read, for everybody loves to go to a party. Everybody wondered who was giving the party and how it could be on the pond. But each fairy was so busy fixing his best clothes and getting ready to go that there was really no time to find out. All afternoon, the three hostess fairies, with the help of 100 spiders and 1,000 fireflies, worked and worked until at last everything was ready. They barely had time to slip home and change their dresses and shoes before sundown. When the western sky grew pink and the big red sun was just ready to cover his head for the night, the queen and all her subjects arrived for the party. And such a beautiful scene they saw before them. From the shore to the big lily leaves were stretched ropes of flowers held together by silver strands, making a wide walk. Welcome on in. Hey, Stitch. Welcome, guys. All right, they're making a wide walk. All the tall lilies had been painted blue or pink, and the family of fireflies was shut up in each lily so that when they glowed like the huge blue and pink lanterns hung from the clouds. From lily to lily, the busy spiders had woven silken strands of thousands of fireflies marched up and down, over and along the silver ropes until the whole pond seemed like a blaze of light and color. The queen and her subjects stood on the bank, watching the beautiful scene before them. When the twilight faded to night and the stars peeped out. Turning the page. Overhead to see what made all the beautiful light on the color earth, the queen stepped daintily out on the flower walk. Everybody followed her out to the big lily leaf, and the party began. Such dances as they danced, and such games as they played, only the old man at the moon saw, and he never told a word about it. At midnight, they had a lovely supper of honey and candied violets, and then the fun went on until the stars got tired of watching and went to sleep, and the old man and the moon dropped down behind a hill and the eastern sky glowed pink. Then everybody told White, Violet, Budleaf, and Sparkling Shell what a lovely party it had been, and said goodbye and went sleepily home very happily. But was that all that was left from the party? No, indeed. For do you know ever? Sorry, we're live and the door just opened. Let Marley do his barking thing and he'll get back in bed. All right. So, did you think that was it? No, indeed. For do you know, ever since the tall water lilies have been pink and a drop of blue, and the daisy been pink and deep blue. Oh, for do you know, ever since the tall water lilies have been pink and deep blue, and the daisies, and every daisy field, you will find some daisies with odd markings on their white petals. Grown folks would tell you that they are var- variants, but you know better. They're really marks left from the fairy letters and from when we read about the fairy party. Welcome on in, everyone. Thank you for being here. Tonight's the second part of the flower fairies. I'm having a doozy of a time. Thank you, dear Lucy, for joining us tonight. Hub Interactive. She must be finished writing names. I appreciate seeing you. And Stitch by Maymuna. Welcome, welcome. She always has wonderful videos and loops playing over there. And of course, dear Patrick is in the back. All right, let us continue. We're on Forget-Me-Nots. How did they get their coloring? So the premise, if you missed Tuesday's reading, is that at the beginning, all the world was white. And so each of the story is telling how the flower got its color from the fairies. For 3 long days, the rain had fallen, rain and more rain, until all the fairies and the whole forest thought the sun must be lost, so it couldn't shine anymore. It really seemed as if at each night the water that came down, hold on, everything got small on me. Let me blow that up. Okay. All right. Really seemed the only way for the... Let's start over. That's what we shall do. Forget-me-nots. For 3 long days, the rain had fallen, rain and more rain, until the fairies and the whole of the forest thought the sun must be lost, so it couldn't shine any more. It really seems as if each night all the water that came down was rain during the day must be drawn up into clouds again, only to come down as more rain the next day. That seemed really the only way, for the fairies didn't believe the clouds could hold all at once as much water as fell in 3 days. At last the rain stopped, but still the sun forgot to shine, and everything in the forest seemed gray and wet and sloppy. I'm so glad to see you, Lucy. Oh dear, sighed Green Twig. We'll visit at the end, if you want to stick around. Oh dear, sighed Green Twig, peeping out of the flower where he had been hiding during the rain. It is so dismal and wet looking, but I can't stay here any longer. I must stretch. So down he jumped into the soft, spongy mud beneath the flower, and off he went to find a playmate. First, he whistled under Leafbud's flower, then under Silvermoss's, but no answer. So he went on until he came to where White Violet lived, and there He didn't try whistling. He simply shook the flower stem so hard that White Violet thought there must be a dreadful windstorm and peeked out between the petals to see what could be the matter. It stopped raining, said Green Twig. Come down and play. All right, said White Violet, daintily flying down to the ground. But what can we play when everything is so wet? Oh, we can find something to do, said Green Twig happily. But first, let's make sure the others. Oh, thank you, Nikki. Oh, thank you for my clovers. I appreciate you, sister. Oh, we can find something to do, but first let's make others come with us. He and White Violet ran from the flower, laughing and shaking the stems until all their fairy playmates were tumbling to the ground. Now that you have us all down in the mud, what shall we do? Asked Leafbud crossly. You see, he had just been dreaming of a beautiful sailing in the sunny cloud, and he didn't like being woken up tumbled into the mud. Oh, I don't know what to do, said Green Twig, for now the fun of waking everybody up was over. He couldn't think of anything else to do. Well, said Silver Moss dismayedly, you know we can always ask the Queen. Yes, they all shouted, brightening up with that cheerful idea. Let's go see the Queen, for she always knows something to do. They all started towards the palace, but they had a sorry time getting there, for the mud splashed with every step, and big drops of water dripped from the trees. The fairy wings got limp and damp, and the pearly shoes all splashed till finally they took turns, and somebody said, Mucus Cleanius, all the time in the way they got to the palace fairly tidy. The Queen must have seen them coming, for she leaned out of her flower and called, How do you do, everybody? I am so very glad to see you. I wasn't expecting any visitors today. Come on, come in, right into my palace. She jumped down and led the way to a lovely dry spot under some big May apple leaves, which were just like umbrellas, and there they all played until a lot of the water had been soaked into the ground and everything was much drier. But still the sun didn't shine, and the sky was gray as it could be. Oh dear, sighed Sparkle Shell. I am so tired of romping here. I want the sun to shine and the sky to smile. Of course, we all want that, said the Queen very gravely. I think I would rather see blue sky than anything I know of. But with all of my magic, I cannot change the sky. I'll tell you what we can do, though, she added. I, of course, let me see. I scroll too fast and lose my click. Oh, of course, what we all want, I think I can't change the sky, but I'll tell you what I can do, she added. That wasn't so hard. Her face brightened into a smile. Each of you get your paint boxes, and I'll tell you a splendid thing to do. Everyone was off with a skip and a jump, and it wasn't more than 2 minutes before every fairy was back again with paint boxes in hand. Now, said the Queen, what do you most want to see? Answer carefully. Everybody looked around, up and down, and they saw the gray sky and the gray earth and even a gray, muddy brook tumbling over gray rocks. Almost with one voice they shouted, We want to see the blue sky. Just as I thought, said the little Queen. Now, look at this flower. She held up a white flower with 4 tiny white petals. Do you see any of these growing around? She asked. Yes, indeed, cried White Violet. There are lots of them along the edge of the brook. That is true, replied the queen. Now I want you to paint these flowers the color of the sky. The fairies set to work very happily. They were selecting their flowers, getting their brushes, and mixing their paints when Green Twig exclaimed, Oh dear, I can't remember the color of the sky. It's many colors of blue. That made the fairies stop and think, and nobody could remember the exact color of blue the sky had been. That is a problem. The queen saw the trouble they were in and held up her hand for them to stop work and listen. All this spring, she said, I've been watching the sky and looking at it morning, night, and noonday. And some of its blue is stored in my eyes. So they So they looked into her eyes and saw love and kindness and the blue of the sunny heavens. And every fairy began painting at once, and in a short time all the tiny flowers that had been white were as blue as the queen's shining eyes, and the ground looked as if a tiny piece of the sky had dropped down from heaven. Just then the clouds parted, and from a blue sky the sun looked out on all the fairies busily painting. At last every little flower was painted and the brushes all cleaned and put away. Every fairy was happy to see such beautiful work well done. I wish this flower had a name, said White Violet, softly touching the velvety blue petals. Maybe it has. I'll ask the queen. No, said the queen when she was asked, but the flower is too little to have a name. But every time you look at it, please think of sunshine and blue skies and forget me not. And ever since that day, the tiny blue flower, the color of sky, had been called Forget-Me-Nots. Yes, indeed. And my friends, we came to the end of yet another book. I am so excited to see everyone here tonight. I know I started a little early, but that's just what time bedtime starts around here. So that's what time we do our reading. But I would love to visit for a second. Hi, Nikki's Happy Lifestyle. Thanks for my four-leaf clover jewels. I so appreciate that. Hyper Interactive, thanks for hanging out all night. I surely do appreciate it. Lucy Warren, I am so glad to have you in. It has been a minute. We are all so busy, but when we get time to visit, it's like a special treat, or it is to me anyway. Thanks for being with me. I have seen you haven't been. I've been busy, but it will be active again. That is okay. You know, sometimes we all need to stop and catch our breath from YouTube. I was doing a second channel and exercising and uploading it. And truthfully, I really have plans for this channel and need to focus more on this. And I just got to be too much, so I had to stop. So I 100% understand. However, whether you're active or not, there are still videos to go watch. Just old lives to be replayed, and I will sure to replay some for you tomorrow. And of course, Hyperactive, stitched by Mimuna. Oh, and Patrick is left, and everybody else, thank you as well. So let me tell you what I'm doing, guys. I had a podcast and had all of the episodes in a podcast, but then I started thinking, because a lot of these are in 2 parts, 6 parts, 8 parts, why don't I smash them all together and one grand book, put the books back together. So I'm going to publish a new podcast probably next Friday or in a week or so. But as you'll see, tomorrow is dropping the video of the Brothers Grimm, because that was something we read over 6 nights. And I put the entire storybook together as one. So that is a longer one. Like this one I'll put together. And actually when I take out all of my pauses and my wait a second here and I lost my place there, and kind of get it to flow a little bit better, it shortens the time. So I am taking everything out, making them back, putting them back to books, and I hope everybody enjoys that. Yeah, it'd be something to definitely do. And then when you want just to hear a fairy tale and you don't want to read it, you can know where to go to turn it on. Yes, Lucy girl, I'm always happy to see you. And I'm also going to start working on, so you know how with YouTube, especially in the US and Canada, we're all supposed to be having some, like, they have all these products and all these things we can work on selling, or what, shopping things. So some of my shorts, I'm going to try different ASMRs like I did with the dogs, and they're like treats. So I'm really gonna also, in the month of April, my focus is going to be on products, and just trying to get the shopping going a little bit, because that is another stream of income to explore. And I am working. Okay, I've put together the Patreon page. I just haven't recorded anything to upload on my Patreon page. And I also, if you haven't connected and you want to connect just for some place to scroll, if you're Instagramming, the Fabulous Nut ASMR Instagram page is up and slowly posting. So that catches you all up until we meet again on Sunday for a new book. I have no idea what it is going to be, but it will be something with fairies. And between now and then, hopefully I can find my microphone and we'll be good to read. It is so weird. Like if I look on my computer, everything is so much brighter. But when I look on my phone, it's like this nice, calm, relaxing image. Anyway, I do thank you all for spending time with me. Oh, wait, hold on. I have to do a membership giveaway. Dun, 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 dun. Hold on. I have to do membership giveaway, and here they come. I'm sending out 5 memberships. Yes. So, Lucy, you have received a membership. Mara received one. Oh, Creations got one, and a Patience got one. So yay! There you go. Enjoy. Check it out. See what's up there. And it should be the Big Nut. I think I have it set for the Big Nut membership, so you can really see what's up there. This month has been the month that I have practiced and really spent time working on memberships, because I wasn't doing anything with my memberships. So I think I have some stuff set up, some things going, and it's subject to get better as we go along. All right, yay! Thank you, guys. Thank you, and I will see you all tomorrow, because I will be in your houses running some videos for you. And Lucy, I'll replay some live, but it is great to see you. Yes. All right, guys. Well, yeah, that's it. That's all I got. Everybody stay warm. We got blasted with that cold blast, but my crocus are out. My daffodils are out. Remember, we're doing midday meditations, midday break. If you just need a spot to connect right now, I am using images from my yard and a lot of the birds, but I think I might try to hit it with some music tomorrow, because I've used outdoor sounds twice. with that being said, have a fabulous rest of your night, everybody. Until later. And thanks again, Nikki, for my little shamrocks. Yeah, I could keep talking, but let's go to bed. All right, Nikki, text me. Bye.